Chapter 14 of Babbitt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mike Vendetti, MikeVendetti.com. Babbitt by Sinclair Lewis. Chapter 14. This autumn, a Mr. W. G. Harding of Marion, Ohio, was appointed President of the United States, but Zenith was less interested in the national campaign than in the local election. Seneca Doane, though he was a lawyer and a graduate of the State University, was a candidate for mayor of Zenith on an alarming labor ticket. To oppose him, the Democrats and Republicans united on Lucas Prout, a mattress manufacturer with a perfect record for sanity. Mr. Prout was supported by the banks, the Chamber of Commerce, all the decent newspapers, and George F. Babbitt. Babbitt was precinct leader on Floral Heights, but his district was safe and he longed for stouter battling. His convention paper had given him the beginning of a reputation for oratory, so the Republican Democratic Central Committee sent him to the 7th Ward in South Zenith to address small audiences of workmen and clerks and wives uneasy with their new votes. He acquired a fame enduring for weeks. Now and then a reporter was present at one of his meetings, and the headlines, though they were not very large, indicated that George F. Babbitt had addressed a cheering throng, and distinguished men of affairs had pointed out the fallacies of Doane. Once, in the Review section of the Sunday Advocate-Times, there was a photograph of Babbitt and a dozen other business men, with the caption, "Leaders of Zenith Finance and Commerce who back Prout." He deserved his glory. He was an excellent campaigner. He had faith. He was certain that if Lincoln were alive, he would be electioneering for Mr. W. G. Harding, unless he came to Zenith and electioneered for Lucas Prout. He did not confuse audiences by silly subtleties. Prout represented honest industry. Seneca Doane represented whining laziness, and you could take your choice. With his broad shoulders and vigorous voice, he was obviously a good fellow, and rarest of all, he really liked people. He almost liked common workmen. He wanted them to be well paid and able to afford high rents, though naturally they must not interfere with the reasonable profits of stockholders. Thus nobly endowed and keyed high by the discovery that he was a natural orator, he was popular with audiences, and he raged through the campaign, renowned not only in the 7th and 8th Wards, but even in parts of the 16th. 2. Crowded in his car, they came driving up to Turavan Hall, South Zenith. Babbitt, his wife, Verona, Ted, and Paul and Zilla Riesling. The hall was over a delicatessen shop in a street banging with trolley cars and smelling of onions and gasoline and fried fish. A new appreciation of Babbitt filled all of them, including Babbitt. "Don't know how you keep it up. Talking to 3 bunches in one evening. Wish I had your strength," said Paul, and Ted exclaimed to Verona, "The old man certainly does know how to kid these roughnecks along." Men in black sateen shirts, their faces new-washed but with a hint of grime under their eyes, were loitering on the broad stairs up to the hall. Babbitt's party politely edged through them and into the whitewashed room, at the front of which was a dais with a red plush throne and pine altar painted watery blue, as used nightly to the grand masters and supreme potentates of unimaginable lodges. The hall was full. As Babbitt pushed through the fringe, standing at the back, he heard the precious tribute, "That's him!" The chairman bustled down the center aisle with an impressive, "The Speaker? All ready, sir? Let's see. What's the name, sir?" Then Babbitt slid into a sea of eloquence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the 16th Ward, there is one who cannot be with us here tonight, a man than whom there is no more stalwart Trojan in all the political arenas. I refer to our leader, the Honorable Lucas Prout, standard-bearer of the city and county of Zenith. Since he is not here, I trust that you will bear with me as a friend and neighbor, as one who is proud to share with you the common blessing of being a resident of the great city of Zenith. I tell you in all candor, honestly, and sincerity,
how the issues of this critical campaign appear to one plain man of business, to one who, brought up to the blessings of poverty and of manual labor, has, even when fate condemned him to sit at a desk, yet never forgotten how it feels, by heck, to be up at 5:30 and at the factory with the old dinner pail in his hardened mitt when the whistle blew at 7, unless the owner sneaked in 10 minutes on us and blew it early. Laughter. To come down to the basics and fundamental issues of this campaign, the great error insincerely promulgated by Seneca Doane. There were workmen who jeered, young cynical workmen, for the most part foreigners, Jews, Swedes, Irishmen, Italians, but the older men, the patient, bleached, stooped carpenters and mechanics, cheered him, and when he worked up to his antecedent of Lincoln their eyes were wet. Modestly, busily, he hurried out of the hall on delicious applause, and sped off to his third audience of the evening. "Ted, you better drive," he said. "Kind of all in after that spiel. Well, Paul, how'd it go? Did I get 'em?" "Bully! Corking! You had a lot of pep." Mrs. Babbitt worshiped. "Oh, it was fine, so clear and interesting, and such nice ideas. When I hear you orating, I realize I don't appreciate how profoundly you think, and what a splendid brain and vocabulary you have. Just splendid." But Verona was irritating. "Dad," she worried, "how do you know that public ownership of utilities and so on and so forth will always be a failure?" Mrs. Babbitt reproved, "Rone, I think you should see and realize that your father's all worn out with orating. It's no time to expect him to explain these complicated subjects. I'm sure when he's rested he'll be glad to explain it all to you. Now let's all be quiet and give Papa a chance to get ready for his next speech. Just think, right now they're gathering in Maccabee Temple and waiting for us." 3. Mr. Lucas Prout, in sound business, defeated Mr. Seneca Doane in class rule, and Zenith was again saved. Babbitt was offered several minor appointments to distribute amongst poor relations, but he preferred advance information about the extension of paved highways, and this a grateful administration gave to him. Also, he was one of only 19 speakers at the dinner with which the Chamber of Commerce celebrated the victory of righteousness. His reputation for oratory established, at the dinner of the Zenith Real Estate Board he made the annual address. The Advocate-Times reported this speech with unusual fullness. "One of the liveliest banquets that has recently been pulled off occurred last night in the annual get-together fest of the Zenith Real Estate Board, held in the Venetian ballroom of the O'Hearn House. Mine host, Gil O'Hearn, had as usual done himself proud, and those assembled feasted on such an assemblage of plates as could be rivaled nowhere west of New York, if there, and washed down the plenteous feed with a cup which inspired but did not inebriate, in the shape of cider from the farm of Chandler Mott, president of the board, and who acted as witty and efficient chairman. As Mr. Mott was suffering from slight infection and sore throat, G.F. Babbitt made the principal talk. Besides outlining the progress of touristing real estate titles, Mr. Babbitt spoke in part as follows: "In rising to address you with my impromptu speech carefully tucked into my vest pocket, I am reminded of the story of two Irishmen, Mike and Pat, who were riding on the Pullman. Both of them, I forgot to say, were sailors in the Navy. It seems Mike had the lower berth, and by he heard a terrible racket from the upper, and when he yelled up to find out what the trouble was, Pat answered, 'I shouldn't be heading now. Can I ever get a night's sleep at all? I've been trying to get in this darn little hammock ever since 8 bells.' Now, gentlemen, standing up here before you, I feel a good deal like Pat, and maybe after I've spieled along for a while, I may feel so darn small that I am able to crawl into a Pullman hammock with no trouble at all. Gentlemen, it strikes me that each year at this annual occasion, when friend and foe get together and lay down the battle axe and let the waves of good fellowship waft them up the flowery slopes of amity, it behooves us